wonderful to be here tonight. I'm super excited to be working with Red, Wine, and Blue and to be here with you guys. So many of my colleagues have worked with Red, Wine, and Blue and just had nothing but amazing things to say. So I'm excited to get my first taste of presenting with you all tonight. As Julie said, my name is Lauren Rodriguez, and I'm a regional field director at COSA for our Campaign for Our Shared Future. As she said, my background is community organizing, education, and primarily local electoral work. So I've done a lot of school boards myself, worked with community groups on a lot of school board races myself over the years, as well as city council, all the way up to presidential. So sort of a wide range of both community organizing and electoral, which is why I'm here with you guys tonight, because this kind of falls where all of my passions are. And I'm seeing in the chat, we've got people from all over the country. That's wonderful. I myself am originally from Boston, Mass, but I have been in Austin, Texas for almost 20 years now. As an organizer, when I went to school down here, I went, God, Texas is tough. If I'm going to organize, I'm going to do it here. So I stayed in Texas with the idea that it needed a little more organizing than Boston did. And I'm a proud Texan now these days. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. So as the name on the slide suggests, right, this is how to be proactive, part of the troublemaker training. It's how to push for inclusive school policies. So before we begin tonight, let's talk a little, before we go into our goals, let's talk a little bit about Campaign for Our Shared Future, or COSA. We grew out of the culture war issues that are raging in the schools right now. You know, the same issues that you guys are dealing with every day. We started as a reaction to the attacks on critical race theory in schools. We sort of stuck around to be proactive in the fight that for all students to have access to an inclusive, high quality education that's going to prepare them for the future. So as you see on the slide, COSA has 4 primary goals, and I'm actually going to read them to you. We're going to reduce harm caused by polarized political debate and misguided educational policy. We're here to help defend high quality and inclusive instruction, curriculum, and training. We're also here to reframe the public debate so it centers on the needs of children and actually promotes a positive vision for the future. And finally, we're here to increase the capacity of local organizations to carry this work on in their states, their local communities. So like practically what that actually means is being on the front lines with students, parents, activists like you all on the call tonight. We're fighting for truth in education, for anti-racist policies, and for recognition, inclusion, and fair treatment for all students. So part of that mission is to help provide the tools that people need to win these fights. So that's why I'm here, to help equip you guys today with some tools that you'll need to push for, some tools you'll need to push for inclusive policies that can help you make some real change in your districts and your community. So to that end, tonight, our goals are going to be to learn the value of school board resolutions, to learn how to introduce those resolutions, and I'm going to go over sample resolutions that we have and give you guys a resolution bank at the end of this that you can take home, read the resolutions, and you'll learn today how you can modify those and actually begin to introduce those and get those passed in your home districts. So to start off, like, what do school boards do? That's not something that most people know unless you have to dive into this work. So that's why I like to start it at the basic is what do school boards do? So local school boards have a tremendous role to play in the success of our school and our students. School boards adopt policies and resolutions that are going to govern school employees and students. You know, these policies have to follow state laws or rules adopted by the State Department of Education. But there is, as we'll talk about, there is a lot of strength in the resolutions and policy at the school board level itself. So sort of start off, right, what's the difference between a policy and a resolution? A board resolution is a formal statement adopted by the school board that expresses the board's position on a particular issue. And it typically includes 2 sections. One section describes facts and values, and that second section describes the district's plan of action. And so the resolutions are typically used to address specific topics or issues that are of common concern to the school district or community. And after the school board adopts a resolution, They may also adopt a policy that provides a more detailed guidelines about what the resolution requires or prohibits. The board policies themselves, they're a set of guidelines or rules that govern the operation of the school district. So while the resolutions themselves can sometimes include policy changes, districts more often supplement resolutions with additional policies to sort of fill in what the resolutions themselves didn't specify. So the school board can also task the superintendent with adopting and implementing administrative regulations or additional rules that describe in even greater detail how that policy is going to be put into action. So these rules can include anything from like timelines to school staff's roles and responsibilities. It's a little bit, their resolutions and policy go hand in hand, but there's some slight differences in that. Right? So how do we adopt them? Now that we know a little bit about what they are, how do we actually adopt them? School board resolutions are typically proposed by members of the school board and are then voted on by the entire board. To adopt a policy or resolution, school boards host public meetings or host a public meeting. And they're going to take a formal vote during that meeting. And the majority of the board members must vote for adopting that policy or resolution. Then this is where you guys come in as community members. Community members and stakeholders have the right to attend those public meetings in which the board adopts that new policy or resolution. And the meeting agendas are usually, or should be, publicized ahead of time, usually on the district's website. So members of the public, in addition to having the right to go there, you may also have the right to place a discussion of board policy or resolution on the board's agenda. And the procedure of placing that item on the agenda is going to differ amongst different districts. So consult your district for more info. Most of your districts are going to have that information readily available on your website, or on their website. So I can't encourage you enough to get on your school board's website and get familiar with it. That it usually has information about the resolutions. It's got a calendar that says when they're voting and what they're voting for. It usually contains the sort of the step-by-step policies of the district of how you get a resolution put onto the agenda. So I encourage everyone. Oh, and it usually includes election too, when those school board members are up for election. So I encourage everyone to become very familiar with their school district's website. That, if you are not already regularly checking it, it's going to be a fantastic resource, not just for resolutions and policy, but for all of that work you do in your districts. So a little bit about how you can advocate for a resolution. You can advocate for a resolution a couple of different ways. First, you can just contact the board members. You can write, call, or meet with your school board members. You don't have to be an expert on education policy to do that. It's a board member's job to hear your concerns, questions, compliments if they so deserve it, or complaints. That is their job. You are not expected to know everything. It is their job to answer questions for you. So contact your board members, email them, call them, make an appointment. You can let the board members know that you're exploring an issue or whatever issue it is that you're passionate about, that you're exploring passing a resolution. Board members can actually be really powerful allies. They can introduce and advocate on behalf of the resolution that you and your community group, you and your parents group are advocating for. And if there's already a resolution under consideration, make an appointment and let them know why you support or oppose it. See how you can work together to either get it passed or to stop it, depending on where you fall on that issue or on any particular resolution or policy. You can also contact your superintendent. Superintendents work really closely with the school board members on policy. In fact, some school board bylaws actually require that superintendents identify and communicate to the board issues that affect the community, and even to have to suggest new policies or revise old policies. Some superintendents may even be required to research issues, gather data, and get community and staff input. You are an incredibly lucky person if you are in a district where that is required. If that is required in your district, and again, that information can be found on your board's website, you have potentially a great ally in your superintendent to communicate your concerns. On the other hand, if your district is not one where your superintendent is striving for equity in the same way you are, it's good to be aware of what they do, what their responsibilities are. Do they have to gather data from the community and from staff to do things? You can prompt them to make them do that if they are not a superintendent who is on the side of equity. You can make sure they are doing their job and act as sort of a check on that. And you can always set up an individual meeting with your superintendent to see where they stand on that issue, to figure out how you want to play with that. But it's a good idea. I always suggest talking to your principal first. Your principal, again, if it's a principal who you get along with and is on the side of equity with you, that principal is going to be a good person who can help you figure out who the best people in your community are to go ahead and either pass or oppose that resolution or policy. You would also review your district school board policies. Build your own knowledge about what sort of inclusion policies your district already has. Right? Grow your confidence in communicating their value by coming to events like this, troublemaker trainings, different trainings that are going to teach you how to speak, how to tell your story of self, how to testify. Grow your confidence in communicating the value of the resolutions and your own values. Also, familiarize yourself with how your local school board works. As I say, make that district website your best friend. Get to know that inside and out. You may even be able to develop a resolution yourself. And that's what we'll be talking about for the bulk of today is resolutions that you guys can potentially either work with, depending on what your rules are, either work with your board to get passed or even propose yourself, then work with your board. So if there's no resolution currently on the table in your district about what you care about, they say you may have the power to propose that or ask one of your school board members to. So review your district's proposed or established policies and then identify the gaps, figure out where you want to add things, and then add them. Most districts, I say, publish their board policies and bylaws directly on the website. And the bank of resolutions that I'm going to show you in a moment, they can serve as your starting point for your advocacy efforts. And then finally, of course, you can participate in an actual board meeting. You can follow your individual meetings with school board members, superintendent, principals by showing up and raising your issue at a school board meeting. So we're going to now talk a little bit about some resolutions. So before we dive into the samples that you can actually copy and modify for your school district, and I'll explain sort of what they all are, just want to talk about a few best practices for creating your own resolution. And pardon my need for water, I have some allergies here. All right. Well, so first, shorter is better in a resolution. If it's too long, people aren't going to read it. I would love to say that wasn't true, but unfortunately it is. If it's too long, people, including the school board members, aren't going to read it. That being said, what I have on this slide is much shorter than any resolution you're likely to submit. I used just a portion of one of our resolutions on this slide to give you a sense of how it should be structured. So you'll notice, I don't know if you can all read these on your screen, but you'll notice that every issue brought up in the whereas clause, just that little green clause right there, you'll see it highlighted, says whereas, and then whereas. It should be dealt with in your resolved clauses, which is highlighted in yellow. So every time you say, whereas this is true, it should be, so it be resolved that, whatever issue it is. So that's just a little point for you guys to remember when you are modifying your own resolutions. So remove any whereas clause that is not directly addressed by a resolved as. And so this bank I'll give you guys all access to comes properly formatted. There's, again, just something for you to remember if you're editing those resolutions for your own district, or even if you're creating your own resolutions. Also, make sure you've done your homework on the process, right? So not only should you research your district's process for how a resolution might be introduced, but you should also research who on your board and in your community as a whole is likely to support your resolution and who is likely to oppose it. So approach your potential allies and ask them to speak on behalf of your resolution. Give them talking points, help them prepare their testimony if necessary. Just practice, 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 right? So you don't just have to go there yourself and read your testimony. That's amazing. That's wonderful if you can do that. But as organizers, and you guys are all organizers, if you're all on this call, if you are here to learn about this stuff, you are probably organizing in your community. As organizers, encourage other people to give testimony too, right? You can get with a sympathetic school board member, a sympathetic principal, superintendent, somebody who can help you work out talking points, someone at Red Wine and Blue, possibly, right? Whoever you rely on for talking points about the issues, get those talking points and work with your network so you have 10 people all there to speak on behalf of that resolution you're pushing for. So it's combining the policy work you guys are learning and resolutions and passing it and working with your board members and your organizing skills together. And together, that's going to make what you're doing that much more powerful and make your resolution that much more likely to pass or to not pass, depending on which side of it you're on. And so finally, anticipate who might oppose your resolution as well, not just who's going to support it. And what they might say. Now, don't let them pull you off topic when you're testifying, right? Stick to your talking points, but do prepare yourself for the kind of questions and feedback you are going to expect from board members if you're testifying, or from folks on the other side as you're writing your resolution. Keep that in mind so you can try to address it, but don't let them take you off your talking points. Say what you're there to say. So now we're going to dive into the actual resolution bank and the resolutions that you're all going to have access to after this training. So the first we have is freedom to learn, and that's a resolution for opposing harmful resolutions. This is the only one that is a statewide, not a school district one, so that's why I put it at the top. We can focus on school district, but there's a lot of bad things happening in a lot of state houses around the country, unfortunately related to schools and education and inclusion. So I put this at the top and I'll make it available for you guys too. It opposes state house gag orders that target the discussion of American history, race, racism, gender, sexual orientation. And it's intended to be delivered to those state lawmakers. The rest that we're going to talk about are all designed for school board resolutions. The next one is the supporting LGBTQIA students, staff, and family. This resolution, as it says, right, opposes harmful anti-LGBTQIA gag orders and commits proactively to creating safe and inclusive schools for LGBTQIA students, staff, and family. So what I love about that, it is not just reacting. It also, as you get into it, read it, has some steps for protecting, being proactive. Whenever you're passing a resolution, unfortunately, just given the times and what's happening, we do have to be reactive very often. But to the best of your ability, try to also be proactive if you can, right? We want to try to stop some of this stuff before it even trickles to us. Those of us who are lucky enough not to be under a full assault right now in our district. So we also have on this slide an affirming history and civics education. This one is going to safeguard history and civics education in the face of gag orders, and it commits to standing with educators who teach academic standards in a way that actually represents the full scope of this country's history and really presents reality. So this one is great, not only right for the school and for protecting curriculum, but it also talks about standing with educators and helping your educators who are on your side, who are trying to, who hate these two, who are trying to teach and who don't want to be banned from teaching in the way, unfortunately, many of them are being restricted. And the last one on this slide is going to be the affirming parents and students' rights resolution. This one, again, as it says, affirms parents and students' rights. And that's including a parent's right to timely information about their child's progress and well-being, and a student's right to an inclusive learning environment and curriculum. And this, as I'm sure many of you have heard of, the Parents' Bill of Rights or parents' rights, coming from sort of a far right perspective, pushing anti-inclusion and saying they want the right to, take slavery out of education, to take all of these things that are not the whole and complete truth. So this is our way of saying, right, we do believe in parents' rights and student rights, but not the way you guys talk about them. So this is our sort of counter to the Parents' Bill of Rights that you hear from the other side so frequently. So in this context, parents and student rights is a wonderful thing. And now we have 4 more resolutions. And I'm hoping as you're listening that one of these is going to strike you for your district, and you're going to be able to say, oh, I definitely want to bring this back to my district, right? I'm hoping that you guys will, at the end, when you go home to your communities, take these, and I'll give you, again, I say the exact resolutions, the real ones, and find ones that are going to work for you in your community. So the last 4 that we're going to talk about are investing in family, student, and community engagement. This resolution invests in strengthening the partnerships between families, students, and community members, including identifying and removing barriers of participation for families of all backgrounds, right? So this is making sure our school is really for every child, and that it reflects the community. Your kids are from the community. So we want families, students, and community to be working together and removing any type of barriers of participation for families, right? If board meetings are only at night, what about parents that work at night, right? So figuring out potentially ways to stream your board meetings if they don't already, or all different ways to make sure that families of all stripes are able to participate, not just in school, but also in board meetings. So the next one is the strengthening student leadership. This model resolution affirms the value of student leadership and authorizes a formal student representative position on the school board. This is personally one of my absolute favorite ones, and I actually pushed for our policy team to write this. We have some kids, we used to have a student task force. We had some kids on the student task force who, prior to us even writing this resolution, had done this themselves in their own high schools and gotten themselves up on their board. Most school boards don't have anything saying one way or the other, whether students can be on the board. So if your board doesn't prohibit this, which is very likely to, you can actually work to get a student a seat on the board. It's very unlikely that they'll have a voting seat, but a student there is a reminder every time they are debating about resolutions, about policies. There's a student voice there reminding them what the students think, right? What the actual people being affected by these policies think. So that is, I would like to give a special shout out for that one, because that is one of my personal favorites. All types of organizing, the big deal we make is about the people who are affected by an issue getting a voice. And because they're under 18, frequently students don't get that same consideration. So if you don't already have a student on your board, I highly encourage you to use that resolution. It is one of my favorites. And then next we have another good one, of course, is the SEL, or Social Emotional Learning Resolution. This one affirms the value of SEL and commits to actual real investments in SEL programs. So it's a resolution. Also, finally, we've got the mental health supports resolution. This one affirms the agency of the youth mental health crisis. And it actually commits to investing in mental health supports and resources, and condemns harmful state legislation that could harm students' mental health. Again, right, a lot of the things that are harming the policies, harming student mental health are coming from the state level. So in a minute, when we talk about the power and opportunity of school board resolutions, you'll see why that is important. But our resolution bank, right, this thing developed over time from real-time requests from the field, as a range of equity topics that our partners from all over the country are facing in their districts, and ones that I imagine you guys here tonight are also facing in your districts. That being said, these make the resolutions your own, right? One of the model resolutions cover only part of what you want to do. Decide if it makes sense to combine it with another resolution. If one resolution covers what you want, but also includes things you don't want, right? Take the non-relevant parts out. These are designed for you guys to be able to both tailor them to your specific district, or to use the language as is, right? So I encourage you to do what makes sense for you and for your district. So the opportunity of school board resolutions, right? We have a great opportunity with resolutions. They can, of course, be used, right, as a policy tactic to protect your district, but they also can act as an example to other districts. They can even be used as an organizing tactic to build or reinvigorate your base, the people you're organizing with, the people in your community who care about these issues. So on the policy impact, right? Passing resolutions in your district, even if your district is a pro-equity district already, that can inspire other districts to pass the same or similar resolutions. And I'm sure you guys have seen, as I've seen all around the country, that, you know, in this district right here, everything's great and wonderful. But in this district right here, and this district right here, and the other one beside it, things are really blowing up. You are in that pro-equity district, pass policies now. That stuff is probably or very likely creeping towards you. So be proactive and pass those resolutions now. And in that vein, right, it can protect your district from that bad policy. That bad policy we were talking about coming from state level, state legislation. District policy can never go against state law. So if a state bans a particular practice, if a state bans a particular practice, a school resolution can't override that. But in reality, most state legislation, most bills don't ban particular practices. They actually get their power from a lack of clarity, and then districts overcorrecting and rolling back all of their inclusive programs because the language in the bill is so vague, everyone's afraid they're going to break it. So if you already have a resolution that says you protect equity in your district in any of the ways that we talked about in this resolution bank, if you have that proactively, and then a bill were to pass, your board with their attorneys would be obligated to decide which district policies they have to change to comply with the law and which ones they don't. So doing this proactively could actually safeguard your district from overcorrecting. They say that's where those state laws get their power. Vagueness and districts overcorrecting. So even if your district is fabulous right now, I recommend still trying to proactively pass some of these. And sort of make that a little clearer, just think that if, for those of you who may not have experienced this, think of the Don't Say Gay law in Florida, right? Say that were to now pass in Pennsylvania, a resolution that institutes gender neutral bathrooms would still hold under the law. You would still be allowed to have gender neutral bathrooms, right? Only any provision about instructioning K through third on LGBTQ issues wouldn't, right? But in the reality, Florida, most people stop any type of inclusive programming simply because overcorrecting in fear, right? There's real fear about accidentally breaking one of these new rules. So in other words, district policies can't protect your district per se. No one bill is going to roll back all inclusive policies in your district. So passing more of those now or resolutions, it's going to safeguard them from overcorrecting. And so that is just one of my favorite things to point out, because really the state laws get their power from vagueness. So protect yourselves from overcorrecting. And then, of course, there's also going to be the organizing impact that you're going to get from passing resolutions, right? You can grow your base. You're going to find leaders, supporters, and voters. You find a resolution, you're going to see other people cheering, clapping. Go to those people next who you saw in the audience. Those might be your next community members that you work with, right? When you see people testifying about resolutions and they're on your side, go to them. You've got great organizing directors here. I know you understand that work here at Red, Wine, and Blue. But use these organizing resolutions and that school district work to really grow your base and your voter base for when school board elections come around. And use it to engage your base, right? It's just a good way to get people excited. Let them see that work is happening, right? Let them see you're doing work. Get them engaged to start doing work themselves. Get them on the phone to call people to come out and support resolutions. You just got someone to do work, right? They're on their way to becoming a leader if you gave them work. The other good thing about resolutions from the organizing perspective is that it states your values clearly. You've stated your values, you've made them public, whether it be you, your organization, and that's going to, one, allow others to come to you, but it also makes it clear that you, your organization, your community group are players, and it makes it clear where you stand. It can also be a flex of power, which is a good thing, right? Particularly, I love to see parent groups or parent-student community groups passing resolution from start to finish. That's something to be incredibly proud of, and it's something to make the school board members think twice. They've seen your power. They're gonna think about that the next time they're gonna propose something good or bad. They're gonna realize there's a group of people out there who actually has the power to get these things passed. So flex your power. Organizing is about building power in your community. Resolutions are also a great way to determine where board members stand on our issues. Some board members, it's real easy to tell. Other board members, you kind of have to dig it out, especially if they were a new board member and no one really knows much about them. That may not be the case in some places, but in some places it is. Use passing a resolution or trying to pass a resolution to figure out where board members are going to stand, get the lay of the land, who's on your side, who believes in equity and inclusion, who might be there but just needs a little push, and who is absolutely going to oppose you on everything, almost every single thing you do. That's powerful, just trying to get the lay of that land. That's going to help you organize and do your campaigns better. I mean, organizing campaigns as well as GOTV and electoral. And finally, and this is all, not just resolutions, this is all organizing actions, all organizing work. It shows supporters what we can achieve when we work together, right? It's a way to show them that organizing is the solution. Passing a resolution is a great way to advertise to people, we've got power, we can do it. If you want to make change, we're the people you come to, right? It's a great way to show people in your community that things are happening and that they can be a part of it. So I'm going to pause here. That's the end of the formal presentation. I want to take questions from folks in the chat. I also am going to reserve some time at the end for those of you who want to ask questions specifically about resolutions or stick around and look at them and ask me questions about ways you may pass them. How do we avoid getting in a tit for tat with this sort of organizing activity with folks who have the opposing views? That is a great question. It's sticking to your talking points. It's preparing, and again, whether we have messaging sessions at COSA that I can give folks a link to sign up for about these equity and education points. I'm sure Red, White, and Blue, White and Blue has a million resources as well. Not answering every nonsense question that they, or accusation that they necessarily throw at you. They can talk at you and stick to your talking points. That's the way. You don't tit for tat. If they want to, well, you guys are all groomers. I'm not going to acknowledge that question. That's dumb. I'm just going to repeat my talking point to them in a different way. That's how I avoid the tit for tat. It honestly takes practice. I've practiced in front of my mirror before, if I'm being totally honest. If I know I'm going to some place where that is likely to happen, I encourage you to ask and practice in your mirror. What else do we have? Do you see others, Julie?
Yes. What do you do when boards start repealing policies? In New Jersey, policy 5756, which provides guidance for trans students in accordance with the law, is considering repealing this policy in at least 5 districts this week alone.
That unfortunately is coming up. The same thing happened in a Missouri district that I work in not that long ago. They just blanket repealed all policies, so they couldn't be accused of doing it only for equity ones. So a couple things. I get people, and this is actually one of my organizers in Missouri is going to be doing. They're calling their supporters. They're getting folks to do sort of a sign holding little demonstration before the board meeting, the next board meeting. They're calling press and asking press to come up to just cover their sign holding. And then they're going to have a speaker, of course, too. It's a press conference. And then many of them are going to be signed to speak, and they're all raising objection to that. So my advice, launch a full-on organizing campaign to either get them to reverse that or to get them to pass some other resolution that you're proposing that both covers that and potentially more.
Thank you to Lauren for coming and presenting on this tonight. We truly appreciate it. You guys know we're all about local issues, all about going to your school board and, making your voices heard in your community. So any skills you can develop to do that. So we thank Lauren for that. I know this work is frustrating. We all know this work is frustrating. You win, you lose. Sometimes you just got to figure out if your school board's not going to be cooperative because it's all extremists, and you got to try to vote them out. I always laugh. I live in a conservative area, guys. And so we've been fighting this battle since 2016, and we're slowly seeing progress, but that was since 2016. But it's happening. And so I love to adopt the Moms Demand action phrase, losing forward. You just got to keep looking at you're making movement when you're doing this work. And if you're not there using your voice, if you're not speaking up, then there's only one voice doing it. So I know that everything you guys are doing is making an impact in your community. So, keep going. We really, really are so proud of everybody, and take that break when you need that break and then jump right back in. Okay. Well, you guys have a really great rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.